Paddy, you're here, right? Ethy, are you here too?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Ethy has requested to have a little bit of a, well, I don't know if we should call it a debate, but a conversation maybe with Paddy. Paddy, are you down for that?
Yeah, I'm just crossing the street real quick. I might like time out or something.
Yeah, sure. But if you guys want to go at it, I guess now would probably be a good time.
Okay,
So,
well, I don't want anyone to feel like I'm hijacking anything. It's like if anyone
No,
wants
you should.
to,
I'll do it.
yeah, if anyone wants
Nah, it's
to
good.
pick anything out of what I'm saying, that's fine. So, like, my main contention with what Patty was saying was that, oh yeah, like vegans can't talk about necessity because then it like falls down on them. Well, I think this comes from a worldview of the vegan comparing themselves, or the carnists comparing themselves to the vegans. I think what the vegan is trying to get at is that if you compare yourself to you if you were vegan, and you if you were making more ethical choices, the point is that you would be causing less suffering. So it's not the complete like elimination. It's like, yes, that's what we should be striving for, but obviously nobody's perfect, and that's not something that we would it's not something that would really be expected of you. But the point is, you could be doing better, and that's what we're saying. And to say, oh, well, you're doing unnecessary things, that's kind of besides the point. That's not an argument against veganism. And you saying that, like, oh, yeah, you cause, you cause deaths in sweatshops or whatever. Yeah, that's not an argument against veganism. You could be vegan and not cause, suffering in sweatshops or anything like that. You could be vegan and, not do any of those things. So I don't know why that would be an argument against veganism or a contention in a veganism debate.
Sure, and I'll still man this position. If I were vegan, I have a much different idea of what being vegan is compared to a lot of vegans whom are, for the most part, middle class Americans who do have the ability to make changes, but they choose not to. So, if I were vegan, what I would do is I would seek to do things like be off the grid, um, build my own home, not go buy a home in little neighborhoods or whatever. I would
Suburbs.
strive and seek to, yeah, right, not be in suburbs. I would seek to actually be out in more rural area. I would do things like not buy out of season fruit. I would do things like not buy processed food. I would do things like invest in more environmentally friendly ways to power my home, like solar or collect my own rainwater, things like that. And in fact, there are some vegans who have done this, and some of them ended up becoming non-vegans because they decided they were going to grow their own food. They were going to completely remove themselves from the system, and they realized, wow, the food that I'm growing in the climate that I'm in is actually not fulfilling to my needs, and they ended up having to do things like hunt squirrels to fill in their fat intake and things like that. So my personal idea of being a vegan would be doing the absolute most that I could do without making little excuses for myself like nobody's perfect. That's why I do what I do
Well,
now.
that's
I
not.
don't
Yeah.
believe in hold on.
That's
I don't believe in I don't believe in the whole vegan ideal of you can never use animals. So but I do believe in like taking care of the earth and doing what you can to reduce your footprint within the system. I just don't believe in the idea of never using animals and removing yourself from literal nature. Um,
Well,
so
yeah. So my point is, like, with the and that's actually quite a beautiful monologue you just did of what you could do as a vegan, and I think if that would actually reduce suffering, then yeah, that's a good thing. But with like removing yourself off of the grid, I think that is actually, it's not conducive to the vegan goal a lot of the time, because you actually have to be inside of the institution if you want to change the institution. If you're just out in the woods, you can't really do much,
to change the
activism or
system.
anything like that. Yeah.
that's not true. I mean, I'm out in the woods and I advocate for agriculture. Being off the grid doesn't mean you don't have electricity.
Well,
Yeah,
my
but you are for like if you're going to let's just say I'm vegan and I live right by NYC. So that means that I get a lot of opportunities to go to protests and other organizations and help out. If I were to move outwards, let's just say I were to move out into Virginia, I can advocate within my smaller community, but it's more like I have a bigger reach here in that I reach more people when I'm talking about stuff.
Yeah, but
So you don't actually reach more people. You reach more suburban whites who live in little apartments on top of each other. You're not reach. See, this
Is
is the
that really
problem
what
with
you
vegan
think
activism.
NYC is? Suburban white?
Wow, dude,
For the most
she's
part.
actually one of them. She's actually one of them.
No, guys,
For the most
seriously,
part.
talking about these
Look,
things will never help anybody
look.
in reducing
This is the
suffering.
problem. This is the problem with vegan activism, though, is that you guys appeal to the literal, the literal. How can
PC
I just say
culture.
this without being? Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
I
you
know
guys
what you're
appeal.
talking about, and I found it interesting that you brought up going off the grid and hunting and the whole, because there are people in Appalachia that do that. They live in that, and I brought that up earlier. But that sort of is not what I really wanted to go on. And what I'm going on with veganism is the amount of people that go to supermarkets and pick it up, because those are the people that are literally putting themselves in the food web. Those are people that are like, okay, wow, I'm really
They're
not going
in
to
the
have
food
anything
web?
to, I'm not going to have anything to eat, and I can't go buy anything, so I'm literally left only to hunt.
Wait, I'm
People,
sorry. Who exactly did you say was in food? You mean the hunters are in the food web, right?
pe-
Right?
yeah, I'd say that.
Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, no, you mixed it with the supermarkets, and I got a little confused. But yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
you're good.
Most of us are removed from the food web, which is why I don't like that whole natural argument. But also, like, there's a difference between people who who actually hunt to survive because they won't be able to eat.
Okay, so being in a city doesn't necessarily mean that you have choice, and this is what I was talking about why vegan activism is so fucked. Because for the most part, vegans as a demographic are middle class white people who have the ability to get mostly whatever they want.
Bullshit.
No, it's not. You can look up the demographics. I mean, really, you can look at
Every vegan I know is like working class.
Okay, maybe in your country. What I mean in the United States, which is what I assume. Olive. I'm not looking
Oliver.
at my phone. Oliver, which is why I'm.
Wait, does working class mean non-white?
No, working.
I mean,
no, I said middle class. Middle class doesn't mean non-white. However, for the most part, as a demographic, vegans are mostly white, middle class, and they are suburbanites, and they are mostly progressive. You can look those statistics up. I'm 100% right.
Well, I don't
most
really
vegans
see why
aren't
this is relevant.
suburbanites. Most vegans aren't suburbanites.
City, suburbanite, whatever.
Most
So they're
progressives
not
are
the
like
same.
middle class.
What does this? How does this go back to what you were saying with the vegan movement?
It's my point about why veganism is so fucked. You guys think that you're appealing to everyone, but you're not. You appeal to this one tiny demographic. This is why when you look at statistics for trends, why veganism goes up and down, nothing ever sticks. Veganism's not about veganism. I'm sure you know this, but the reason why people fall out of the vegan bandwagon is not because people don't realize that vegan food is delicious or whatever, but because people don't ultimately agree with vegan ideals. The idea that you should never use animals.
Well, I don't know if that's true.
The idea.
And
But also, you brought up that it's a
if it
very
was true.
small part. That's not true. 50% of America lives in suburbs. If you're reaching the suburbs, that's literally half of America.
Like I said, going back before, nobody is connecting with the idea that you should not use animals.
well,
That's why the vegan demographic is so small.
Well, no, I'm not sure if that's even true, because a lot of non-vegans that I've talked to, in my personal experience, they say that they agree that, and they're just too lazy. And I feel like that's a lot of non-vegans. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think you can make the claim that it's all because of the ideals. I think most people just straight up value animals, and that's why when they go to these anonymous...
doesn't mean that you don't want to eat them. Valuing it, again...
Well, right.
Valuing animals doesn't mean that you don't want to eat them.
Well, right, and they want to eat animals, but they realize that it's wrong, and I think that's a lot of people. Yeah, they value eating it, but they value not eating it more, and that's why people are vegan. And yeah, of course it's going to appeal to white people, because that's just mainly...
You just said that you anecdotally, this was your anecdotal experience, you just said that people say that they agree with vegan ideas, but they're too lazy to do them. If you value something, you're not going to be lazy to do it.
Well, no, yes, you are. You can have there are low-level values.
If you truly value and believe that life is important, such as even animal life, then you're not going to eat them.
Well, yeah. Well,
There
no,
are
the point.
low-level values. There are people who call themselves Christians and never go to church or never do anything, but they're Christians. That's something that they hold themselves as a titles.
Yeah, they're not Christian.
Well, yeah, that's if you're holding like this absolutist stance.
Calling yourself something and then not abiding by it, not doing it, not practicing it. That's just you being a poser. That's what that is.
No, that doesn't mean that you don't actually value that thing. You can value something and then not act accordingly. Someone could have the exact same ethics as me, besides they just aren't vegan.
Sure, I got a question. If I said that I value my child and then I go back and I kill my child, does that mean I value my child?
Yeah, but you're wrong.
You don't have to necessarily kill it. You could say, oh yeah, I value my child, but then neglect the child. And you're like, you sometimes love the child. But
sometimes love the child?
No, the point is you're acting in contradiction to your value of your child. And that's the vegan point. You're acting in contradiction to your value of the child because you're not doing what's conducive to their desires.
Ethy, I got a question. Do you think that I value my livestock?
Yeah, well, I'm sure you do. I think you've, through admission,
Do you think I value my livestock?
Say that again?
I don't know what you do to your livestock.
Well, I'm asking Ethy. Ethy, do you think that I value my livestock?
I'm not 100% sure. I've never really heard you say that you value your lifestyle. I'm sure you do. I don't know any other reason why you'd live like that.
Do you think I could just call myself a vegan if I wanted to?
Not unless you made some lifestyle changes, because I've seen you murdering rabbits in your videos.
Okay, if I murder rabbits, do you personally think that I value my livestock?
Like I said, I don't know.
I would say no.
Okay.
So if
I go around killing my animals, why the heck would any of you think that someone who goes out knowing what factory farming entails and goes out and buys the product of factory farming, what the hell makes you think that they value those animals?
Well, no,
I think this goes back once again. Alright, I'm sorry, who keeps speaking?
Well, it's alright, but like, most people...
I think this once again goes back to... not all values are equal to each other. There's stuff that we value a lot more than other stuff. Like, not all values are the same.
Shit.
What, me? I didn't
say
anything.
Sorry, it wasn't you. I'm sorry. Adrenal, don't send me Milton Mills racism shit.
Oh, no, I was sending you that to make a point, right? So, you talk about all this... You talk about all this... Are you just going to talk over me while I'm speaking? Are you really that, are you really that rude?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just making a point that minorities and people of color have higher rates of lactose intolerance and allergies to meat and dairy than white people. So, and that guy in the video makes a point about how the dairy industry is racist because they market these and they subsidize these foods and market them in poor areas that have larger demographics of people of color.
That is that is actually the government relationship between food and that. Meat is very expensive, but it's subsidized along with dairy. And then that's why you see why so many vegetables. What?
You know what else is really expensive? Crops. And it's the most subsidized out of
And where do those crops go to? Because I'm pretty sure 80% of crops go to the cows.
I know where this is going. No, it doesn't. Yeah, I know exactly where that's going, and no, it doesn't. I can show you.
All right, so then what percentage of the crops goes to the animals then?
So what animals eat is byproduct, mostly byproduct. The most that makes up cow, chicken feed is corn. And then the rest of it is byproducts. So meals such as grain meal, soybean meal, peanut meal, things like that. So no, nobody's growing a bunch of like grain and barley just to give to cows. We've been pretty efficient, and I'm saying this as someone who's in agriculture. We've been pretty efficient in being able to feed animals byproducts and corn. After humans get to use those things for oils and your cereals, fortified cereals, and things like that.
And how sustainable is that for us?
How sustainable is it for us to eat loads of carbs and then give the byproducts to animals?
How sustainable is it for us to just even keep the animals?
How sustainable is it to keep the animals? For what? I mean, like, for what? Are you talking specifically for the crops?
Well, I'm talking more specifically in which we have a lot. Cows aren't sustainable. We do know that, how much methane they put out.
Cows aren't sustainable? Oh, okay, right, okay.
We're going
to get into cows burping and farting. Okay.
Well, I mean, you could go into chickens and pigs, but then also if you look at the industry themselves, it's largely, now the pork industry is self-regulated in which they can actually just, they don't have to properly, it's not sustainable for us in that.
You keep going back to this factory farming argument.
I really wish you would finish your sentence about pork, because pork is still regulated. The only
pork
thing that
isn't regulated.
Is that, hold on. The only thing that has changed. I'm in agriculture. We still get people who come to. We still get the USDA, the FDA. They still come to the processors to check and make sure we're doing things right. Pork is regulated. It's just been deregulated a little bit. I mean, we're still very much regulated. We still have to abide by laws. We still have to abide by USDA government rules on how to raise pigs, how to feed them, cleaning their waters and all that. Now, here, I'll give you this. Depending on how you define factory farming, because no one person has the same definition of factory farming, I'm totally willing to agree with you, depending on how you define it, that large-scale industrial farming, both crop and meat, is not sustainable.
All right, and I'd also like to go back to try hard. The reason I keep bringing up factory farming is that that's where majority of Americans get their meat from, factory farming.
What's your definition of factory farming?
I think it's raising animals, specifically animals, in concentrated large numbers, in one immediate space.
Okay, do you think that having a large number of animals is inherently cruel?
No, that wasn't her criteria.
It depends, because when we look at factory farming, you're having 10,000 chickens crammed into essentially size of a gymnasium.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's cruel.
So it's not,
if you're going to have 10,000 chickens and it's spread over 5 miles, sure. But we know what factory farms are.
Well, no, I asked you to define factory farming because I've seen other people define it something completely different. So really, it's not necessarily factory farming that you have the opposition to. You have an opposition to the welfare of the animal being farmed. And just ignoring the fact that you don't support the animal being killed anyway, but just ignoring
it. Of course we have an opposition to factory farming in all forms. It doesn't, no matter the definition, we're opposed to all forms of it.
Well, no, but that's not what Oliver just said.
Well, what form of it have you gotten that doesn't really fall? Because I'm confused what form you could be supporting.
Well, so the issue is that factory farming can be defined, like you said, an intensive, large-scale keeping of livestock for the purpose of food, right? But some people can do that and do it completely humanely. So, for example, someone can own thousands of chickens, but those thousands of chickens can also be free range. That still makes it a factory farm under the law. It may be
so the issue is you talk about humanely killing animals, right? But we believe there's just no way to humanely kill an animal.
So that's not
so if just let me finish my point.
Sure.
So if we just look at synonyms for the word humane, we can see compassion or kindness. Do you think there's a way to kindly or compassionately kill a human being?
Absolutely.
All right, but also I think when you brought up free range, I'm sure you're aware of how we define free range isn't actually what people think of when we think free range.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. So let me give you my definition of free range. My definition of free range is open air, and the animal can move between shelter and the open air freely, and they have enough space between them to fit at least 2 of its same size counterparts on each side of them, on all 4 sides of them actually. That would be my definition of free range. So if you have a pig, if I'm talking about a free range pig farm, then those pigs should be able to move in and out of their shelter as they please. And then on all 4 sides of them, a pig their size can they can have that space on all four sides of them without another animal directly in their face. Does that make sense?
All right.
Yeah. So going back, yeah, no, you can absolutely humanely kill a person, just like you can absolutely humanely kill an animal.
All right. So how would you humanely kill a person?
No, I think it needs to be. I think that's not the entire question. I think it's how can you humanely kill a person and then eat them without their consent?
Okay, so I can use the example of, I forgot the name of it, but there was an incident, probably, I think it was like maybe 30, maybe 50 years ago. Plane crashed in on a glacier, actually.
Survive.
Right. Plane crashed in a glacier.
Yeah, but that still entails necessity. This is in a non-necessary situation.
We already went through. No, you can't cut me off now because we already went through the conversation of necessity.
Yeah, I can.
I obviously disagree with you. Hold on.
It's a complete non sequitur. You're just making a category error. Because there's no necessity entailed.
Because I cut you off, and now you're trying to change. Now you're trying to move the goalpost to. Oh wait, but I meant necessity. I think as far as someone's hungry, that might entail necessity.
But if someone's hungry,
I think that goalpost has always been there. But you've just been blowing it off, and completely disregarding it.
You level the
question. And when you try and argue against it, hold on. When you try and argue against it, you just appeal to ignorance, right? You say, well, there's slavery in the world. There's like child slaves and stuff.
No.
So you literally just appeal to ignorance.
I don't think she said.
So you asked me, right? I didn't say that. Ask me a question. I'm going to answer the question, and then you move the goalpost. So that I wouldn't, so that.
But you're going to go back to the cannibalism. You're going.
Then I think we need.
You're going to go to the fact that they cannibalize.
No.
Well, I think we need to go back.
So we have
and figure out why it's a necessity.
Stop. We have great examples. Stop. We have great examples outside of having to eat. Right. We have great examples of people who get injured and they're. For whatever reason, they like World War I, World War II, instances of war. People get severely injured. They look at their partner and say, "Kill me, please."
All right, so they're consenting.
And some people have had to make that choice. Oh, okay, so yes, it's consent. And then some people have had to kill other people even if they haven't consented. So, let's do a really good example then. If you truly do not believe that you cannot humanely kill an animal, what is euthanasia?
Well, no, I think that's missing the point, like, completely, because when we're talking about killing...
The question, though?
Because euthanization, that's different, because it's an animal, first of all, that's in harm, but also... We're eating we're killing it just so that we can eat it. This is a perfectly fine, healthy animal, but we're killing it because we want to eat it.
Well, I can answer the question.
The question was, how can you kill an animal humanely? It wasn't. The question was how can you?
Right?
But
it was
it's
about
against
you
its consent
and your decisions. We weren't asking you how have people done it. We were asking. I was asking you.
Animals consent?
I was asking you how you would do it.
How I would do it?
Yeah, in a hypothetical.
I don't have to hypothetically. I do it. There's multiple ways of killing an animal humanely. So we have,
no, I'm talking about a person.
These are ways that are described within.
Talking about a human
because
being.
Euthanasia is when you end a life to relieve pain or suffering.
Yeah, and being a non-vegan, just killing them outright is doing like the exact opposite, because when you're euthanizing someone or killing someone because they're in pain, you're actually doing what they want. When you're just killing someone and they didn't even know that you're about to do it and they didn't want you to do it, then you're doing the exact opposite. So I don't know why you're acting like it's the same.
Something because I could have swore the question.
No, you're not crazy. I've just been biting my tongue a lot.
I could have swore the question was not how can you kill an animal that's healthy. I could have swore the question was, how do you humanely kill an animal?
Not well, yeah, and I think...
No, it was, how do you humanely kill a human being? That does not...
You humanely kill an animal by killing an animal.
A human being,
but also, I don't think we really have to be super specific with it, because because we are talking about specifically veganism. We don't need to go specifically into just everything.
Okay. No, but I mean,
if you don't like looking like a hypocrite, I imagine.
like what you said earlier. Not to pick on you, but you did say that it was impossible to kill an animal humanely, and you agreed to that.
Right.
Well, she was probably being hyperbolic. I don't think that's actually a principle she holds. And I think...
Really? So now, so you're going to change the behavior. She has to be being hyperbolic.
Well, no, I just think that
also when I thought it was sort of obvious when I'm talking about animals that we're not eating animals because we're taking them out of their suffering. We put them in that suffering and we consume them because we want to eat them. I'm not specifically talking about, the horse... I'm talking about like the horse that hurt its knee and then we have to take it out of its pain, because that's not really what we're doing with it. We're talking about farming here.
Mm-hmm.
Are you? I thought we'd got beyond farming.
Well, no, we're talking about veganism. Farming is obviously closely entwined with that.
Maybe for you.
Well, I don't see how it would not be. That's mainly what's surrounding around the discussion, and I don't really see why we're talking about... Like, we use the word humane, but I think what, we're really trying to get at is the word moral, so I don't know why we're really using the word humane.
Well, okay, I mean, it wasn't you that brought up the word humane, granted.
Right.
I mean, what would you mean by humane?
So, like, I personally wouldn't even really use the word, like, humane. I would just make it a little bit more simple and say, like, oh, well... There are justified cases in which you can kill someone, and there are unjustified cases. I think it's a complete false equivalence.
I feel like if we keep going into this, we're just going to go completely off topic into what is moral. So I think.
Well, that's what veganism is talking about. It's like, is it moral to take an authoritative stance over these beings?
Right. This is what I was talking about previously. Veganism has a moral stance on how you treat animals. That's the problem with vegan activism. You don't have to that because someone goes into veganism that they must be that they're going to be vegan and that they believe within veganism. The problem is people don't pick up the morals of veganism, which is it's immoral to use animals.
There are many vegans who become vegan just because it's. Yeah, but still, they still follows the vegan thing in which I think the best one is that a lot of people become vegans because they realize that it's better for the environment. It doesn't really go into, they don't really care about animals, but they acknowledge that how we farm, because and I keep going back to farming because, that's the biggest one in which we consume. It's not good for the planet. You can do that and not have to be moral.
See, what kills me is that these are the same people that end up going on farms and end up raising animals, and then they're like, oh wow, I see that the way that I'm raising these animals, it's nothing like the way that things that I saw in the videos. That's why you guys keep failing. People don't pick up the moral idea of not using animals for human beings.
Well, yeah, I don't see why that's relevant.
Because we're talking about it right now. All you're describing is a bunch of plant-based vegans with speciesist ideals.
Well, I don't know why you would think that they're all plant-based, or like the majority of them is plant-based. I'd actually have to see data on that. That most of them don't actually agree with like the morals of veganism, because I think even a lot of people who originally went vegan because of health.
I'm going off of what Oliver just said. If you're
Which
going
specific
vegan
part?
Just based on health, if you're going vegan based on health, and maybe you saw a video too about how they farm in the United States, or how some people farm in the United States and in other countries, and then you go vegan because you're like, well, I don't like that at all, and then like she said, these people don't really care about animals. They don't really like animals. They just don't want to participate in that. They're essentially plant-based. They're not vegan. They haven't picked up this idea of not using animals for human purpose. Is that not the ideal of veganism?
Well, yeah, that's plant-based. I don't really know what the point of talking about that is.
But then again, there are vegan farms which do raise animals and then they don't use them they don't use their products.
Is breeding animals vegan? What do you mean by raise animals?
I know specifically of a farm around me in which they take animals that come from factory farms. That's how they get their animals.
Okay, that's
it's sort of more of an animal restaurant.
Yeah, that's different.
But it's like, I don't know how
And still,
informative
like, that's
just
still
talking
not
about
using
like,
the
oh,
animal.
this doesn't stick to to all of these people. I don't really care how many people are vegan, and it's like, yeah, like it's gonna appeal to white people more. It's like just not being
Sure,
violent is
totally.
gonna appeal to white people more on average because black people are disproportionately affected by just being violent and being in the hood, and that's why
I
the
don't
crime
know.
rate is
I don't
so
know
high
who you're
among
referring.
African Americans. Of course, they're not
I
gonna
don't
want to
know
go
who
vegan.
you're. I don't know who you're referring this to. What I said was that, um, for the most part, on what is demographically, vegans are for the most part white, middle class, progressive, and they tend to live in cities or suburbs. That's what I said. I didn't, and part of that, yeah, some messages flow better with some people, especially if someone that they know or someone that they can recognize and commune with and appeal with, those ideas flow better. Yeah, I mean, I totally believe that. It has nothing to do with if black people. I don't know who you're referring that to because I'm black myself. I was raised around black people, all black. So
Yeah, more.
I don't. I don't know
I
who
can
you're.
Here,
confirm she is black.
Adreno messaged me something, and he wanted to push the question of how you, Rabbit, would humanely kill a human that cannot give consent and then eat it.
How I if someone. Oh, are you gonna like change the goalpost to if I am doing this out of survival, or is this just a question, a general
He
question?
he said the question. That's all that's all I got. The question of how you would humanely kill a human that cannot give consent and then eat it
Easy.
on like a regular day. On a regular day.
Under the definition of humane that you gave when I asked you for one, that's very easy to do, right?
What was her definition?
Causing minimum pain.
There you go.
Oh.
Well, I think it could be said that.
That's what I understand humane to mean.
Well, I think it could be said that when she.
Hold on. Let me get. Let me get this clear, right? So you think it would be humane for you or I to be walking down the street, see someone like a baby who cannot give consent, isn't that sentient, then just stab it in the back of the head with as minimal pain as possible? You think?
Because that's the part. It cannot
provided-
consent. It cannot consent.
There's nothing in the definition of humane that includes consent.
Causing minimum pain or suffering. Causing minimum pain or suffering, but also if you're going against what is that, baby? All right. If you were going against what, because that's the part babies can't consent.
Doesn't matter. The definition of humane is exactly the definition that you provided when I asked you. I agreed with your definition because I use that definition also. That's what the word means.
But if it...
Yeah, okay, even if it doesn't, if we don't involve consent, we just say, I mean, we... Wait,
just say it's immoral.
Okay, fuck it.
You can just say it's immoral, you don't have to say it's inhumane, it doesn't really matter.
I got a question for the vegans in the room. Would you cut a human's balls off?
If it consented?
No. Would you cut I don't care if they consent or not. Would you cut a human's balls
Well,
off?
I wouldn't hold the absolutist principle that it's always immoral to cut humans' balls off, if that's what you're asking. Sometimes it's okay.
No, I would not cut it off.
Yeah.
Okay,
I would.
Cut it
Yeah, no, I would hold to the same...
I mean, like, that's just, it's so vague. It's so vague to say...
It's not vague. So, if you
Yes,
wouldn't
it
cut
is.
a human's balls off, why would you do it to an animal?
Well, no, you're trying to pigeonhole us into, like, this absolutist
No,
principle.
why
It's
don't
like,
you just
yes,
answer the
sometimes it's okay to cut someone's balls off. Sometimes it's okay to shoot people. Like...
Well, Ethy, that's your position. So these other two who said, no, I wouldn't cut a human's balls off, why would you do it to a human? But, why wouldn't you do it to a human but not an animal?
Well, I mean, first of all, I don't believe that you gave me a human. That doesn't tell me anything about the human in which I got into the situation that I need to cut off its balls.
Why does there need
you know
to be...
how dogs can get aggressive though, and
So
that
it's okay
especially
to cut
if
off a human's balls if they're aggressive.
there isn't anything between. There's no correlation if you cut off a human's balls that they'll stop being aggressive. There is though with dogs that you see that though.
Why is it okay? Why is it okay to cut off a dog's balls? Why is it okay to spay a female who may want to have babies one day? But it's just not okay to do it to a human.
Because first of all, you're implying that humans get aggressive when, well, I mean, male humans.
I didn't say that.
That if you no, because that's the point in which if you cut off their balls, that they're not going to be aggressive. That's just not true.
You
However,
think
with
that's the
dogs,
only reason
you
people
do see
cut
that.
off dogs' balls? No.
I mean, yeah,
but
you're just saying cutting off dogs' balls. That can mean anything. So if they want to cut off dogs' balls so that they're not aggressive, then yeah, go for it, because that may save the dog from being euthanized against the pet owner's will.
It's totally okay to go against the autonomy of an animal because you think that they might be aggressive. You think that
because there are cases in which an animal will. No, because we see that all the time in which dogs will attack kids and then they're put down. Pet owners know when their dog is aggressive. Like, people know when their animal is aggressive, and they don't want their pet to be killed.
Sounds like humans should take responsibility. It's not like muzzles don't exist.
Well, we do take responsibility because we're minimizing the suffering of the animals and the humans.
The dog doesn't want, like, dogs don't want to be killed.
If we followed your ideology,
I don't think dogs want their balls cut off either.
But do they? But that's the part in which.
Yeah, so if we followed your ideology, there would be more human children being attacked, more humans being mauled by dogs.
No.